So, like for someone watching or listening who would see Bitcoin as pure math and science, how would you explain the link between Jesus and spirituality? Like on the surface, it could seem totally unrelated.
Totally. Yeah, and that was also probably my like early Bitcoin journey. That was also my perception. But when you think about the math and the science, and I agree by the way, I think Bitcoin is pure math and pure science. But what Bitcoin protects is time. And so when we think about, okay, you and I, everyone on Earth spends their time creating value for someone. And sometimes it's
Yeah.
yourself, sometimes it's your spouse, sometimes it's an employer, sometimes it's a customer. But 24 hours in a day are spent creating value for someone. And lots of that time, and hopefully we get value in return for the value that we give. And lots of times that's money. And so when you think about what money actually represents, it's not numbers on a screen, it's not math and science, it's time.
Keep 'em cold till I'm old. I don't plan to blow my load. Wallet so blue, if you know, you know. It's better than bonds, better than gold. Finna reap up what I sow. Fit money can't keep up, it gets sold. How many times you been told? DCA's the way to go. Higher highs, higher lows. Every year my network grows. Every day my network grows. Running relays, running nodes. Yeah. Dollar a day's a minimum. Stats, zap sats. Any fear I get, I'm flipping 'em.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ask a Bitcoiner 21 Questions. I'm your host, Saida Gomez. And today we've got a juicy episode because Adam O'Brien from the Bitcoin Well is joining us. Adam, how are you today?
Hey, it's great to be here. I am doing excellent. I love talking Bitcoin. It's the morning. I just had a big coffee, so I'm in good shape here. The sun is shining. It's summer in Alberta. I mean, it can't get much better.
Totally. And I have to thank you again for waking up early. You are based in Canada on the West Coast. I'm based in Switzerland, so there's a slight time difference.
Yeah, I think what are we? It's actually not too bad. I mean, it's 9 o'clock or just past 9 o'clock. So I had a meeting even before this. So it's no problem. I love getting a jump on the day.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so this episode is going to be really good because we're going to talk about your recent trip to Alaska, your take on Bitcoin treasury companies. You are very insightful because you've got firsthand experience.
Yeah.
And of course, Bitcoin and Jesus, because what would Bitcoin be without Jesus, right?
That's right. Maybe what would Jesus be without Bitcoin? No, that's probably a bit blasphemous.
Yeah.
I like your version better.
And so to our viewers, you know that we've made a recent change to the podcast where when you tune in and watch, you will see a 12-word seed phrase peppered throughout. So the 12 words are peppered throughout the episode. And the reward or the bounty is 21,000 sats. But Adam, CEO of the Bitcoin Well, has generously decided to up the ante. Adam, do you want to tell them how much they can retrieve?
Yeah, I think one of the best things about Bitcoin is that when you add the scarcity number, it makes a meme number. And so we're going to add 21,000 sats to that bounty so that there's 42,000 sats sitting in that wallet. And I also just want to highlight how cool that is and how when you align monetary incentives, it literally pays the viewer to watch this podcast. And that is so cool. And there's no company in the middle. There's no, service you have to sign up for. That is just raw Bitcoin in its purest form. You're educating, you're incentivizing, and you're rewarding. That is I love Bitcoin.
Absolutely. So to our viewers out there, be sure to subscribe, hit your notification bells so that you know every time an episode drops, and you can increase your chance of winning the sats. So, Adam, you were recently in Alaska. Can you just tell me about the trip? Why Alaska? What it was about?
Yeah, Alaska. I'd never been there before, and I had the opportunity to go for Bitcoin Alaska. It was their first Bitcoin conference that they had there in Juneau, which is the capital of Alaska. And lately I've been traveling, making decisions on where to go and speak and participate based on, where my family can go.
Yeah.
Obviously, we were in Vegas. I didn't bring the kids, but I got to bring my wife. I have 4 children. And so going to Alaska, I took all 4 kids and my wife, and it was awesome. It was cool. I'm really, really interested in helping and being a part of these small communities adopting Bitcoin education. And so this conference was small, couple hundred people at most, I would say, but it was so intimate and it was cool. We got to go on this whale cruise, which is like a hilarious double entendre of like a Bitcoin whale. But it was kind of like from my perspective anyways, I didn't know what to expect. I've never been on a whale cruise before, but we were off grid. I didn't have cell phone signal for 8 hours, which I don't think I haven't not had cell phone signal for 8 hours in, I don't know, 15 years, like forever. And so being with a bunch of the attendees and the speakers for 8 hours, basically uninterrupted, while in beautiful, Alaska, was awesome. Got to connect, made new connections with people that I maybe otherwise wouldn't have, and then we kind of kicked through. We did a polar dip, so we got up at 5 a.m, ran for a mile, and then jumped into glacier water, which was that was also the face that I made. It was freezing, but it was super, super cool, and it was just one of those events. Like the conference itself, I had the pleasure of speaking a couple of times, which I love. Getting on stage and educating and talking about. I talked about Jesus and Bitcoin, so good timing. And then also talked about I was on a fireside chat with Isabella, who's doing a circular economy down in Isla Mujeres, and so we talked about that. And it was so cool to be able to do all that, but that wasn't even the highlight. It was like the satellite events, the kind of sub events, the community that was made. There was some protesters out front because they didn't like what there was a representative of the government that was there, and they don't like him, so they were protesting him, and they were protesting like Bitcoin things. And it was like a really cool, well-rounded event in small town Juneau. It had good coffee. It was small enough. We walked around. The host, Wade, shout out Wade, it was first class, amazing speaker dinner. We had Tone Vase was cooking up a storm, so it was
nice.
It was super, super cool. And I don't think I would have gone to Juneau otherwise, but I'll definitely be back. So I think it's like using Bitcoin as a draw of like-minded individuals to come and experience your community is such an amazing opportunity, and I feel so grateful to be able to participate in that.
Oh, definitely. So Wade, the organizer, he's the one who's based in Alaska?
Yeah, so he's a local Juneau resident, and he was just like, I want to have more Bitcoin in my city. Yes. And so he did it. And he took a risk, and I'm sure that cost him a ton of money. But he crushed it. The event was top drawer. I think next year's will even be better. One thing in talking to him after was he was inspired to continue like creating a circular economy in Juneau. I think that's a really important part. We were all desperate to spend sats in the economy in the local community. And there was actually smart kid. He had a lemonade stand, and he came and like parked his lemonade stand right in front of the conference, selling cookies and lemonade. Smart. And he was accepting Bitcoin. So we were all out there like zapping him and getting him Bitcoin. So yeah, it was really a cool event, and I will absolutely go back and encourage people to do that. Also encourage people to like just go to small events. It's great to be at Vegas or last year in Nashville and BTC Prague and all these adopting like all these massive events, but I would challenge people, just look in your area, and if there's none, hey, maybe that's your sign, right? Maybe that's your sign to do it. It doesn't have to be some big thing. Hit me up on Twitter. We'll see if my family and I can come down and I'll yap for a couple of minutes. Like it's not about the conference, in my opinion. It's about the community and the smaller events. Do a polar plunge, or whatever's like. If I don't know, maybe you're skiing, maybe you're doing something else. Just like organize something fun for Bitcoiners to come and do, and you'll be a hero in the space.
Yeah, they'll show up. I caught you on the Bitcoin Way podcast talking about that, and your vision of just seeing a lot of smaller conferences peppered all over the world, as opposed to these like big ticket events, or maybe in conjunction with them. And I couldn't agree with you more. The intimacy that you feel
Yes.
in the smaller conferences, the ability to have one-on-one discussions, which as an introvert, I totally appreciate that. Like I'm always the person on the side having some intense discussion with someone, you know, like it's less intimidating than like these big ticket events.
Yeah. No, and I think too, it's easier to set up and also more decentralized. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. Going to Vegas last year or like earlier this year was great. Got to see all my favorite people in kind of one spot. That's cool. Um, but I think that as far as a big picture perspective, if we all rely on some mega corp to spend
Yeah.
tens of millions of dollars with 30,000 people showing up, I think we're in trouble. I think the community's in trouble. And so I think that doing a small community, 100 people, couple hundred people, even just like shout out to the group in Edmonton here. They're doing little Bitcoin barbecues, and there's whatever, a few dozen people that show up, and that's awesome. And I think that
Yeah.
just getting those small little reps in of hosting a community and really encouraging, again, like-minded individuals to connect and encourage each other and help each other. That's the decentralized way. And I am super, super bullish on the future of events like that.
Yeah. So I've been to smaller conferences. I don't think I've been to like a really big one. Maybe the biggest one has been Lugano. And for about a year, I organized the Bitcoin meetup here in Geneva, which is like quite intimate. And I will say this out loud, it's not Bitcoin only, which I respect the individuals, but it kind of like turned me off a bit. But questions surrounding philosophy and religion, especially amongst Europeans, came up quite frequently. And
Nice.
the tone here is not so Christian. So I'm curious because you did speak about Jesus and Bitcoin in Alaska. How is that received? And actually, before you answer that, what made you decide to speak about that at the conference?
Oh, great question. I gave my first presentation surrounding kind of Jesus and Bitcoin actually in Costa Rica almost 2 years ago now. And it started off, the presentation started, and they asked me to speak about kind of like orange pilling and kind of the strategy and stuff. And so as I was prepping for that talk, I was going down this time preference, this kind of like, internal thoughts, which led me to like the Bitcoin journey in general and how the Bitcoin journey kind of teaches us so much. And as I was reflecting and kind of thinking about and writing this talk, I just kind of kept coming back to Jesus and how like the Bitcoin journey, it ends with kind of low time preference, and with low time preference, we have to kind of like consider our mortality, and with mortality, you kind of have to go down this like pretty, it's pretty binary. It's like kind of one thing from the presentation, like what happens after we die? It's like something or nothing,
Yeah.
and when you think about that, like with some, in my opinion, some first principle thinking, like nothing is a pretty tough argument in my opinion, and I go into that in depth in the presentation that I gave. But once you kind of get through that, then it's a little bit more like, okay, well, if there's a creator, let's see what he says about money. Let's see what he says about, decentralization. Let's see what, and then let's move to Jesus and see what he says about living. And let's see how all of that stacks up against, a Bitcoiner mindset and a Bitcoiner ethos. And so it's been a cool, I've given the presentation now, I think 5 or 6 times, and each time I'm getting feedback, learning more about it. I'm deeply interested in it. And I have the luxury of kind of like refining and giving it more and more and more. And every single time I've given it, I've had people coming up with just so much encouragement, and I think positivity. People that I probably wouldn't have connected with on that level
Yeah.
before, saying like, "Wow, that like this." So this weekend, I was there with my wife and kids, and so I give the presentation, and afterwards, this guy came up and he was like, "Hey, just so you know, like I'm here with my wife and our 17-year-old daughter, and this talk moved her in a way that no other talk has." And I was like, "Oh, like amazing," and
Yeah.
it's like that when I hear that, I think to myself two things. I feel incredibly inspired to keep going, but also it feels bigger than me. It feels like God's moving in me and in my work, and kind of like showing me the path and the natural incentives of humanity, to kind of continue refining and giving the presentation. And so, yeah, it's been, even the first time I gave it in Costa Rica, and I was nervous because I'd never talked about like publicly, like I think I like probably didn't shy away from the fact that I was a Christian, but it certainly wasn't like a main part of my brand. And so that was a big kind of step out, and it was like really well received. And like, not to use vanity metrics to kind of like say how well it went, but I got like a standing ovation, which was like, didn't expect that. And that like, that just felt good. And it felt like kind of encouragement to go through it. So yeah, it was really interesting there. And then kind of giving it again and again and again and again, getting people to challenge some of the arguments. And then I get to think like, okay, this is a good challenge. Let me research. How do I feel about that? And going through, and that either confirms or, you know, I get new info and I adjust. And so that's kind of how I've always been, is like, there is objective truth. I want to find it. And I'm at a point in my journey where this is what I believe to be objective truth. I want more data, and I want to confirm or change. And so yeah, that's been super cool. The premise of the conversation is basically, there are three kinds of people in this world, and we kind of go through this journey. You go pre-maxi, like pre-Bitcoin maxi, which it sounds like where lots of your Bitcoin meetup friends are. And you kind of think like, oh, you know, there's so much stuff, TradFi, we got to like think about investing, blah, blah, blah. Then you learn about Bitcoin, you learn about money, you learn about decentralization, you learn about the system. And now you're like, whoa, everything goes to zero against Bitcoin. I better like buckle down and figure out Bitcoin. But then in that, you realize, hey, there's more to this. And then you move to Jesus Maxi. So you go like pre-Maxi, Bitcoin Maxi, Jesus Maxi. And I kind of walked through that thought for about 45 minutes. And yeah, it's been a journey. It's been super cool. I feel super lucky to be able to have the privilege to be able to get on stage and do that. And yeah, it's even on Twitter, like when I post about it and stuff, it's great watching some of the people in the comments like love it or hate it. And you know, it feels like, in my opinion, it feels like we are, as a society, a nation on the rise, a society on the rise that has the luxury of saying these things, building in public, and thinking in public. And that's super cool.
It is, definitely. So, like, for someone watching or listening who would see Bitcoin as pure math and science, how would you explain the link between Jesus and spirituality? Like, on the surface, it could seem totally unrelated.
Totally. Yeah. And that was also probably in my like early Bitcoin journey. That was also my perception. But when you think about the math and the science, and I agree, by the way, I think Bitcoin is pure math and pure science, but what Bitcoin protects is time. And so when we think about, okay, you and I, everyone on Earth spends their time creating value for someone. And sometimes it's yourself, sometimes it's your spouse, sometimes it's an employer, sometimes it's a customer. But 24 hours in a day are spent creating value for someone. And lots of that time, and hopefully we get value in return for the value that we give. And lots of times that's money. And so when you think about what money actually represents, it's not numbers on a screen. It's not math and science. It's time. And time is a deeply intimate thing. How you spend your time is different than how I spend my time. And that's very intimate and personal. And how you spend your time changes when you meet a loved one, when you have a child, when you have new friends, when you find, you know, a community. And the way that we spend our time changes. And that's also very, very personal and very intimate. And that's so much more than math or science. And so when you think about, you know, it kind of is the perfect system in we have this math science tool that is designed to protect a very intimate and, dare I say, spiritual asset in time. And so the link there is quite simple from my perspective. Now we have to look at, And one of the questions we kind of dive through is, okay, do I have to ditch this orange pill in favor of, the white pill, or kind of this like spiritual pill? But I think that what I've seen, and this is probably recency bias, but what I've seen is Bitcoin is a lot more spiritual than I had originally. Like when I found Bitcoin, it was like, oh great, let's make a couple bucks and here we go.
Yeah,
Then
money.
it was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
exactly, and that's kind of how it starts, and that's fine. And then it's like, oh, we've made a couple bucks now. How do we scale, and what's this all about? It's like, whoa, freedom. That's amazing. Like Bitcoin actually protects my time from, whether it be like a 6102, or whether it be the government that wants to do, nefarious activity or whatever. We are protecting our time. We're getting freedom. And then it's like, hey, freedom is quite a spiritual thing. Like I don't think anyone's out there thinking like, oh, freedom is just math and science. It's bigger than that. And so drawing that link through it, it's a really cool, interesting journey that I really love talking about. And I've been also probably more interested in the, like what I would call the origin story. And I feel like the ancient history of money is, I think, what makes Bitcoin so good. Because we've seen what worked, what hasn't, and now how Bitcoin solves that. And I think that same logic can be applied to just life, where it's like, hey, when you investigate, when you look at the ancient history of the world, you look at what's worked, what hasn't, and what our modern technology protects, but also doesn't do a very good job of doing anymore. It's cool how we can, use the past to inform and influence the future. I think Bitcoin does that. And I think that, we are called as human beings to do that as well. One of the things that I found deeply interesting, my mom and I were discussing this probably a couple weeks ago over lunch. And she told me, and I hadn't read it until recently, but in the Old Testament, like, how there's kings, I think like ancient history is kings, right? We used to have a monarchy, and we moved to democracy, whatever, a couple hundred years ago. But the original vision that God had for the earth wasn't kings. It was completely decentralized and self-governed. And the people were like, hey, like talking to God, like, we need a king. Give us a king. We want someone to lead us. We want someone to be here. And literally in the Bible, God's like, yo, that's going to corrupt. Like, that's not that good. And the people are like, no, like, give us a king. We want someone to be in charge. And so that's when, like, there's King Saul, who gets installed by God, and like, what do you know? He gets corrupted, he gets egotistical, he gets vain, he gets power hungry, he gets lustful, and like, boom, he kind of wrecks things. And then then comes King David, and it's like, he's pretty good. But then guess what? He gets power hungry, he gets corrupted, he gets greedy. Like, it's like this journey is always starts decentralized, starts with a good leader, and then it collapses due to, absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's kind of a law, in my opinion. And it's just really cool looking at that from thousands of years ago, and then coming through to today, being like, that same principle applies, and our money is completely exposed to that. And then what's not, and it's like, Bitcoin's not exposed to that. That's cool. And so, it's really cool to me to be able to, like, and I have the luxury of having expertise in both fields, and interest in one, and experience in the other. And so diving more into that, drawing the link, I feel like I'm uniquely positioned to be able to share that message, and I'm really pumped to be able to do so.
Yeah, like a living testament. In case anyone doesn't know, can you remind us when you got into Bitcoin? In our first interview, I was floored because you got in early and immediately bought an ATM.
Yeah, because I'm a psychopath. 2013, I found Bitcoin, and then bought an ATM. And I don't remember if we went over the full story, but I actually bought an ATM and got, like, I wouldn't say scammed, but I still don't have the ATM that I originally purchased. So, like, call that what you will. I think that person is, like, not a very good businessman. I think he got in over his head and whatever. But I bought an ATM. It didn't come. I went to a different organization, bought an ATM, and then it came. And then I installed what is Alberta's first Bitcoin ATM finally in February 2014. So it was like, yeah, it was definitely a quick journey, but I'm also, like I'm just an extremist. Like I just find something, I like something. I told my wife within 3 weeks of meeting her, I was like, I'm going to marry you. And she was
Oh,
like, you're crazy.
wow.
And I was like, oh yeah. And
When
here
you
we
know,
are.
you know.
We've been together. I met her in 2011, and so we've been together now 14 years.
Congratulations.
And it's yeah, thank you. And it's been amazing. We've been married. We got married in 2014, so we've been married for 11, and we've got 4 amazing kids. And you know, I think this like the benefit for us was that we just got to change together. And I think like Bitcoin, like I'm not the same human being that I was when I found Bitcoin in 2013. And I don't know if time changed me, if Bitcoin changed me, if the business changed me, if my wife changed me, if it's a combination thereof. But I've always just enjoyed embracing change. It's actually probably one of my biggest strengths, but also one of my biggest
Yeah.
downfalls is that I just love change. And, you know, I have to watch myself sometimes if I'm changing intentionally or just changing because I'm craving
Oh,
like
yeah.
a bomb, a grenade, to just like shake things up and move things. And so I would say that was very lucky for me finding Bitcoin early, being like, oh, I'll just change my entire career and just do this. And that seems crazy looking back, but at the time it was like, this makes sense. I've got not much to lose and I'm deeply interested in this. I'm thinking about this all day and all night anyways. Let's go. And so I feel, again, just lucky and right time. But also my dad put it interesting one time. So throughout, really in like 2021, the business started moving in like an insane direction. And we went public and we got some funding and grew the business and added business units and all this stuff. And one of my dad's friends, they were just chatting or whatever, and very harmlessly, the guy was like very happy for me. He was like, "Oh man, Adam, like I'm so pumped how lucky he got getting into Bitcoin so early." My dad was like, "Whoa, whoa, Adam is not lucky. That kid is stubborn, doesn't take no for an
Yeah.
answer,
Yeah.
and won't quit. Pure psychopath." And I think that's what you need to be in an emerging space to kind of drive through it. So yeah, that kind of bit of who I am. Like, it's I think it's very telling who the the early Bitcoin entrepreneurs are based on their personalities and how they kind of showcase that today. The challenge or the secret is not like having that kind of North Star, having that, back to like the spiritual side, like,
Yeah.
you get into Bitcoin early enough, you have a lot of luxuries afforded to you. And if you don't stay grounded and humble and understanding, like that I've seen it wreck lives. I've seen it wreck marriages. I've seen it wreck families. I've seen it wreck businesses. It almost wrecked ours, frankly. Like, I wasn't ready as a CEO and as a leader to have that much money and that much opportunity in the business. And I did a terrible job and we had to restructure and we had to change. And now I feel better equipped. I just made a video on this actually yesterday
Oh,
of
wow.
like, we're only able to reach the level of success before failure that we're ready for. And I feel like I wasn't ready for meteoric success. My leadership talents, my leadership style, my business acumen, it wasn't ready. And now, having gone through that over the last 4 or 5 years, I feel way more ready, way more inspired, and I feel like we're ready for that, 2, 3, 4 big jump to the future. So yeah, it's an exciting time, and feel very,
Definitely.
very inspired to be here.
So part of it is part of like that preparedness is the ability to actually identify what's going on within you. I remember at business school we did like so many leadership, like I mean, the leadership stream was very intensive, and to my surprise, it had a lot to do with how you're doing on the inside as
Yeah,
opposed to like leading people and telling people what to do. And the ability to be self-aware and to say, "Whoa, what's going on?" is huge. Like it's the difference between making a huge mistake and like just stepping back and taking your time.
totally. That self-awareness and learning, and no one really teaches you how to be self-aware. We all hear that it's very important, but I don't know
Yeah.
that any of us necessarily truly know like how to measure that or how to teach that. And so it is really just tiny little incremental changes that you can make in your thought process in your day, for me was thickening my skin. And I feel like Bitcoin prepped me for that. Like,
Oh, yeah.
imagine being 20 years old in 2014, 15, 16, talking to all these like, fancy business people about Bitcoin. And they're like, nah, that's a scam. And I'm like, no, it's
Yeah.
not. Like, here's the proof. And they're like, you're crazy. You're a criminal. You're corrupt. You're garbage. Like, you don't know anything. And I'm like, oh, that feels bad. But like, thick skin, figure it out. And so
Yeah.
through that, I got really good at looking internally at like, well, what do I believe? Like, why isn't like they're wrong? And I feel very confident about that. Why do I think that? And just getting down to that first principle and getting down to what I truly believe in that helped me immensely to now, know when like the team, if like whoever is thinking like, hey, Adam, is this really a good? And I'm like, okay, this is good insight. Let me like, I don't feel attacked by that. I don't feel like
exactly.
it's like,
Yep.
okay, I see where you're coming from. Let me now position where I'm coming from, and let's make the best decision, which is like the right decision. And that might not be my decision. And lots of times it's not my decision. And it's my like, it's that, I think it's that mission. It's like putting filters into the conversation, thumbs up, and
Thumbs up.
and also having self-awareness and humility to like, I don't know all the answers, and I love that I don't know all the answers. There's a lot of pressure, I don't want to know all the answers. Everyone's looking at me all the time. It's like, whoa, can you guys just back off for a sec? Like, let's make this decision together so we can all bring our insight and our experience to make the right decision towards the mission. And yes, since doing that over the last 2-3 years, I feel like the business has just been like moving so much healthier, and I'm super pumped on that.
That's amazing. So, as a Christian, in speaking about humility, how do you resist the temptation to say, I told you so, to all those people who've dismissed you over the years?
Yeah, it is a temptation, I will say. Oftentimes it comes down to mostly the filters, and kind of like one of my personal convictions is to just always like be more like Jesus. Like that's a very internal, personal thing that I want to be. And people hear that and they're like, "Oh, that's preachy, blah blah blah." But like, well, let's look at who he was. Like, the first person he told that he was the Messiah was like a prostitute, or someone who was like, unsavory amongst the community, is how she's described. And so it's like he actively was humble in that delivery of kind of like the good news, the message. And so with my mission being like with him as my North Star, as my like guiding kind of principle, I take that very seriously. And I think about, well, what do I want this person to gain? It's like, I want them to understand Bitcoin. I want them to know about Bitcoin. And so that's the short-term mission.
Yep.
In that. And so it's like, okay, we've got someone who was like objectively wrong, but I want them still to understand Bitcoin because I think that's good for them and their family and their bloodline. And I personally want to act like Jesus. How do I fulfill those three things? And it's like, just logically, I just can't get to like, you suck, I told you. That just doesn't work. And like, that's like it turns into a very logical problem for me where it's like, I think objectively 99% of people on this call will be like, yeah, you kind of got to like be nice and just continue showing them the way.
Yeah.
And I'm fine to like, if you don't want it, you don't want it. That's okay. I'm not going to sit here and force you. Like, that's fine. But I'm also not the guy that's going to stand on a soapbox and be like, you're an idiot. And like, haha, look at me. I'm so smart. Like, I don't need that for my ego. My head is big enough as it is. And I find my pride and my joy in other avenues, and try to find it mostly in Jesus. And everything else stems towards the filters and the mission. And that's like more people understanding Bitcoin whilst, being kind and like Jesus. And so, yeah, I would say that's probably how. Not easy all the time. But it's the easy thing. My wife and I had this discussion, and it completely changed our lives about a year ago now. We got 4 small kids. I'm like working like a psychopath. very dedicated to my corporate mission, whilst also trying to be the family man. You know, she's got the family, like she runs the house, like she's insane. She's such a good like homemaker. She's bringing up our kids. We're now, as of this year, homeschooling, and part of this journey, we're both like exhausted and thinking this is tough and this is not easy. And so we kind of sat down and we were like, okay, we're so lucky. We have the tools to have an easy life. Let's break this down. Let's see what an easy life looks like. And it's like, we couldn't get past one generation of children without it being wrecked, without them being just like really gross human beings, or at least the risk of being really gross human beings. And so what actually gave us the least amount of risk for generations to come was an intentionally difficult life. And that means, you know, it means traveling with 4 kids to go watch, you know, dad speak on a stage about Bitcoin. It means putting in the hours to homeschool. And it means, you know, having those filters and like living true to my convictions to not be like overly toxic and rude. And so, yeah, it's not easy, but I also might encourage people to maybe think like, do you really want easy? Because look at what easy gets you. And it's a little bit high time preference that way.
Hi, everyone. It's Saida, host of Ask a Bitcoiner 21 Questions. To my listeners based in Canada and the US, if you're looking for a seamless way to stack sats, i.e. save money in Bitcoin, check out the Bitcoin Well. And you're probably thinking, Sai, you moved to Switzerland a long time ago. How do you know the service is good? Well, I asked my father, the man who famously told me there's nothing wrong with being frugal, to test out their service, and everything checks out. He visited one of the ATMs in Scarborough. It was very intuitive, very easy to use, and the fees were not too high. So if my dad says it's okay, it's okay. Remember to use referral code AAB21Q when you stack sats with the Bitcoin Well, and please, 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 let me know how your experience is. Give me all of the details. And if you'd ever like to be on Ask a Bitcoiner 21 Questions to talk about your experience with Bitcoin Well, or just your experience with Bitcoin in general, I would be more than happy to host you. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think I needed to hear your message today because I've been holding my tongue with respect to saying I told you so to someone for quite some time. And I'm like, but just say it, like, just get it out, express yourself, like, but you're right. And for me, it's not even about persuading the person that Bitcoin is a good thing anymore. It's really like my hurt feelings from the personal attacks to say, like, basically, instead of saying, why don't you apologize or just letting it go, it's more like, see, I told you so, you know, it's my way of saying you hurt my feelings.
Well, and I agree with you, by the way. There's many people that like called me very rude personal attack names that now are asking me questions about Bitcoin. And you know, like they're like, let's sweep that under the rug. Like,
of course,
I called you a
it didn't
scamming.
happen.
Yeah, exactly. Like I called you a scamming, immature child. But hey, do you mind donating a couple hours of your time to walk me through how this thing works? Like, you know, there's a big disconnect there. And where I go and where I try to go, and I'm not sitting here like I'm some kind of perfect person, but it's like, what is going on in their head, in their brain, that they are so, you know, sick or not self-aware or prideful that they don't have the ability to recognize that and be like, hey, by the way, like, kudos to you. I was super wrong there. I shouldn't have said those things. Can you help me? And so it's like, okay, so we agree that that is an unhealthy person. And it's like, you're probably going to have the ability to show them what is compassion, to show them what is love, and to show them really what is a, but also like, what is a Bitcoiner? Like, stay humble, stack sats doesn't mean, you know, like street corner preacher. It means like, be willing to help someone that wants to be helped. And that's maybe one more reason why Bitcoiners and Jesus look pretty similar.
Yeah, definitely. So we're talking about being humble and humility. I think that you are definitely in a situation where that will become even more important, and you may be challenged or tested even more because your company did go public. You guys hold Bitcoin on the balance sheet. You have investors and stuff. So again, like set it up how it happened, what you guys are actually doing now with respect to, I guess, communicating to investors the value proposition in the Bitcoin well versus like holding spot Bitcoin.
Yeah, great question. And it has not been easy to navigate. Of course, I am never going to advocate for owning anything above Bitcoin and self-custody. I think that Bitcoin and self-custody is the number one generational asset, and all of my investors are aware and understand they are exposed to my decisions. If they bought Bitcoin well for a certain reason, I have full control and ability to just change course and do something different. And so I think that is probably like the best definition of the two different things. What I guess the investors currently like is my ability to make good decisions to continue increasing shareholder value. One thing that's cool about Bitcoin Well is we have a lot of incentivized and aligned incentives with our customer and also with our shareholders. And what that means is we have customers that use Bitcoin Well as a conduit to the fiat world. They hold Bitcoin in self-custody and they get to sell it and pay their credit cards. They get to sell it and send money to a friend, or they get to use money from their paycheck and buy it. And at no point in time are they exposed to Bitcoin Well being the custodian there, because it gets delivered straight to their personal Bitcoin wallets. But also, because of that, Bitcoin Well is uniquely positioned in where the industry is and also where the industry is going.
Yeah.
And so they might see that. They might love the experience. They might love the platform. They might love some of the features that we're thinking of. We just released the ability to buy Bitcoin through Nostr, which is super cool.
I saw that. That's so cool.
Yeah, honestly, it works even better than I thought it was going to work, and I think it's one of the coolest things we've ever launched. And so they might, oh, that's cool. I love what this company's doing, and then that customer becomes a shareholder, not because they're interested in making money, although that is a happy accident that happens, but I think more because they want to support the mission. And this is actually, I think, where investing goes on a Bitcoin standard is, once the entire world wakes up and realizes, hey, I don't have to gamble my money investing to preserve value, Bitcoin's a guarantee. But I want to support this mission. I believe that this individual with this mission can execute to make the world a better place. And so we have a bunch of very mission-focused customers who are Bitcoin only, that believe and go through the brain damage of taking self-custody. They see our mission, which is independence. Like I'm a freedom maxi. I love independence and freedom, almost maybe to a fault sometimes. And further, they're like, that's something that I want my kids to have, so I'm going to support the mission. And so they become shareholders. And then I have the fiduciary duty, the job, the very tall order of making sure that I do a good job, getting the mission and using the tools at place. And one of those tools at place is, of course, the public markets. We have a very unique opportunity during this transfer of wealth that's occurring and will occur we probably got 5 to 7 years left of this transfer of wealth going on. It's going to happen
That's what you think? 5 to 7 years?
I think it's going to be a very, very, very sudden transfer. Wow. Where
I need to stack harder.
You need to stack harder. You absolutely need to stack harder. And the reason I think that is because we had one Bitcoin treasury company in the world last year. We've got probably close to 100 already, maybe more this year, like prominent ones. Within 5 to 7 years, if a public company, even a private one, doesn't have Bitcoin on their balance sheet, they will be at a massive distance. It'll be like not having a website. It'll be like, what are you doing? What do you mean you have, like Apple, what are you doing? You have how many hundreds of billions of dollars just sitting there eroding? That's gross. Like, I don't trust your decisions anymore. It's like, it puts the investor in the investor always will have power over where their money goes, and money is going to naturally flow towards the companies that are doing a good job preserving capital. And that's going to be companies that hold Bitcoin. And so I think that is going to happen very suddenly, very urgently. And we're going to look back and be like, whoa, that was fast. I think Saifedean puts it great. It's like gunpowder. Like at a certain point in history, if you didn't adopt gunpowder, you just don't exist anymore. You're just dead. You lost. And Bitcoin is the financial gunpowder for corporations. And so for Bitcoin Well, we have a very small treasury. And we are actively investigating different ways to be able to utilize our public offering to add to that treasury. Because I think that the prospect of trading company interest for an asset that is scarce and provably fair, and like at this point 99.9% certainty of success, is a very good trade. And we want to be able to give that to our existing shareholders, but also promise that to our future shareholders. So we kind of have this, what I call the Bitcoin super company, what I call turbocharged exposure to Bitcoin. We have mission-focused customers that love the product, that probably want to be shareholders to support the mission. And we have this public offering that we get to use to buy more Bitcoin. That's a win in my mind. And I think that's setting ourselves up. And so, there is some, I think, valid criticism behind like, oh, your stock is a scam. Your stock is a centralized asset. Your stock is blah, blah, blah. And it's like, sure, but companies have to exist. And they can exist for one individual, or they can exist for thousands. And neither is right, neither is wrong. I love private companies that have been private for generations, and the family stacks sats and supports their missions, and that's great. I personally want to decentralize that a little bit more. I want a large number of shareholders that are mostly our customers, and I want to put their capital and their interest at top of mind. And so to me, that looks like, like I said, public offering, using capital markets to buy Bitcoin and support the mission.
Yeah. So I guess one of the key sort of differences or differentiator is, as opposed to a purely Bitcoin treasury company that doesn't have, I guess sufficient operating cash flows, or, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't have operations. It only exists to sell shares of their Bitcoin to the public. You guys are really, it's funny. I had, Harris Irfan on the podcast a few weeks ago. He is very knowledgeable on Islamic finance, and he was explaining that one of the big differences that that exists within Islamic finance is the fact that before investing in a company, the investor, let's say a bank, for example, will do a thorough due diligence of the entire supply chain, the value chain. They'll make sure that things are done in a very ethical manner, because the driving idea is not only a return on your invested capital, but it's really about knowing that this company actually supports the community, gives back, and is just good overall for the community from a money perspective, like it's sound. And so what you're describing reminds me of that a little bit, in the sense that you're talking about your customers who are benefiting from the services that you're offering. They can also become shareholders in order to ensure that you guys continue going, because they are benefiting. Like it's not just like, Wall Street, so to speak.
No, exactly. And I think I hope that's the future of investing, is being able to invest in the future that you want to see. That's honestly my pitch to people that say like, well, why, I can just use insert platform, Strike, River, Swan, ShakePay, like whatever. I can just use that platform and take self-custody. It's like, sure, you're exposed for a very small amount of time if that's your habit. But why not use the platform that you want to see? By the way, we're the same price as all those other platforms, but why not support and use the platform that aligns more with your values? And to be fair, if your values are people aren't smart enough to hold their keys, self-custody is a barrier to entry, then probably Bitcoin Well is not, like, don't. That's fine. We've chosen a very distinct, difficult path, which I believe makes the world a better place over the long run. And if you don't align with that, like, no problem. I'm not building a platform for you. I'm building a platform that I believe is going to help humanity keep and maintain independence. Our mission is 2 words: enable independence. That's it. And every single every single decision at the company goes through that filter. And if there's a decision that doesn't pass the independence test, it doesn't have a very long life at Bitcoin Well. And frankly, if you don't align with that, then we're gonna be butting heads, because I think you're gonna have a hard time using our platform, because we're freedom maxis. We want you to have as much control as possible, and there's trade-offs that come with that. But I think that, again, 10 years down the road, my kids are never going to use a custodial wallet, not ever. I think about the future generation, the digital natives. They're going to be deeply comfortable with self-custodying their generational wealth, and they're going to understand what generational wealth is, because their dad is going to say, hey, by the way, I used to own 1,000 Bitcoin and now I have 0.1 because, Sam Bankman-Fried took it, because Mt. Gox took it, because the government took it, because, insert the reason why custodians collapse and fail. And they're going to be like, oh, I better learn from dad and not make that same mistake.
Yeah, hopefully. This is wonderful, Adam. Thank you so much for dropping by to say hi again. And I really hope that people find inspiration from what you have to say, especially about Christianity, because, I grew up Christian and I strayed, if you want. And I think that becoming a mom and really paying attention to Bitcoin, those 2 things together have brought me closer to my faith, which I'm very grateful for. Wow, I pray every evening before bed, every morning, and I'm sure my husband's like, she didn't do this before. What's going on?
What have I gotten into here?
Yeah, what's going on? No, but honestly, I can say that, the benefits, it's just, I feel more comfortable. I feel more myself. I feel more grounded and stuff. So I hope your message reaches a wide audience. Can you tell people where they can find you in Bitcoin Well?
Yeah. So on Twitter, Adam O'Brien _ is where they can find me. I am pretty active on there. And I personally, what I love is when people use the platform or listen to one of my pieces of videos or read a blog or whatever. And if you disagree, tell me. Like I said, I've been called all the names in the book over the last 10, 12 years. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And I'm like an iron sharpens iron guy. Hit me with whatever you've got. I want to know how to make the platform better, and I want to know how to make my message better. And so please, let me do that, or please do that with me. And if you want to go to Bitcoin Well, you can go to bitcoinwell.com. You've got a ref code that will actually give people the ability to win sats. And so definitely, I'm sure you'll have that in the notes or whatever, but definitely check out Bitcoin Well. Like I said, make an account, tell me why you hate it, and then we will either agree or disagree and then change it. And I love building in public. And I think just hit me on Twitter, Adam O'Brien _, and let's go change the world together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you so much.
Keys. Yeah. Man like quakes. Man like who? Yeah. Takes her Bitcoin off exchanges under self-custody. She runs her own node, providing liquidity. Yeah, she got her own keys. She got her own keys. She got her own keys. Yeah, she got her own keys. 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 Yeah, she got her own keys.